All right. I hope we're live. So, welcome everybody to the first interview on the Practical Personality channel. My first guest, and I feel honored, is Shan. So, Shan, you
Yay!
invited me a few weeks ago to your second live show on consciousness. And
That's
today we want
right.
to essentially continue the conversation. And the topic for today is related to that. It's about the scientific method, and which starts with the idea that we don't see reality as it is. Like, we have our subjective perspective, and we
Right.
want to find ways to align ourselves more closely with objective reality, essentially to create a life of more peace and more joy. But in order to do that, we need to find methods to look at where we off from reality, and that forces us really to look at where we're wrong, where are our dark parts, where do we have fears, where do we avoid responsibility. And
Right.
I always saw it as like a theme that goes through your entire work, like from the typing process that you came up with to choosing like what you look at in types, like where are your demons, where are your fears, where do you
Right.
create tidal waves, to applying that knowledge of type and your voids to self-growth. And so this is what we want to unravel today, step by step. We're also going to talk about social types at the end, also seen through this lens. So my first question, if somebody is here, probably not, like, who doesn't know about OP, how would you introduce what you do to someone new, and what makes your system different from other systems of personality out there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That's a broad question. So it's like I would have to start way at the beginning if I'm talking to somebody brand new. But I think essentially what you're asking for is kind of like what is the summary for like yeah, what's the summary of why we're different? The reality is I think with all of the psychology stuff and all the personality stuff that's going on, the goal is usually intended for temporary feel good in the moment, temporary relief in the moment. And when Dave and I started engaging just personality in general, it was coming from a business perspective where we were mostly shocked by just hundreds and hundreds of emails from people that sounded like the same person. Honestly, it felt like it was like a bot that was, trolling us. Like there's no way that this is like there's got to be some like game of people being like, I know, let's use the exact same fonts. Let's speak in all caps. Let's ask about the instructions and fear of missing instructions. Like it honestly felt like a joke when we were first getting into business. And we realized quickly, like, there might be something to this personality pattern thing. There might actually be something to this. So we came from the perspective of we're already seeing it in reality. So it wasn't like going straight to personality testing because it was fun. It was like something, the patterns are already happening. So how do we explain the patterns that are already happening? And sure enough, we found out that the majority of our customers back in the RC days when we were doing the foam planes in the sky were mostly ISTJs. And so the joke is like all of them were really obsessed with instructions. We were not. And so like every
Oh,
product that we offered was very much like what we would want to solve, and like we don't care about instructions, I'm just slapping this together anyways. But how many people were like the instructions, and there's one piece missing, and therefore I'm afraid that there's missing information here, and if I don't have the lined up I'm terrified that there's going to be a part missing and then I won't be able to build this plane. And so it was funny getting to know our customers from that perspective, because it was such a different thing than our own selves. We're like, okay, this is pretty interesting how hundreds of people even are all acting the same, and it's very different from us. So it's like when you think of like Carl Jung and Freud, when they first started engaging on typing people, it was like, I think it was the two of them and then one other guy, where they're all only seeing the patient in a very different way. Like, I'm seeing this, you're seeing that, you're seeing this, and just kind of acknowledging that the patterns are happening in reality. So with that in mind, we're like, okay, so what's the problem? The problem then with all this personality stuff, because why hasn't this already gotten solved? Why isn't it being more explored? And from there, it's like, okay, so if it started off with Myers-Briggs, really quickly, a lot of that stuff was able to be put in the like the pseudoscience category, where everything was very much like, you can't prove this. And so that became the obsession, is like, if we were to prove this, how would we prove this? And that's where Dave and I, being in separate rooms, attempting to type the same person, and coming up with the same result, that became the obsession. And from that obsession, more parts were discovered, like, the savior demon energies of something, because both of us were seeing parts that would be the same, but like, why is this one their preferred and this one is not their preferred? How do you tell the difference between somebody's preferred peacocking apart, and then this isn't something that they do every day? How would you actually know? And, and then from there, seeing that the human themselves has this information that is actually missing to them, that became the fascination of the result. So it came from seeing this thing in reality to potentially, like, why is it not being used? Okay, there's a pseudoscience category that's happening not here. How would you prove it? And then also, once we go to try and prove it, seeing this very giant missing information in this savior demon energy, and that the human themselves can't see this because they're not supposed to see this. If they saw this every day, it would slow down the brain too much, and therefore they wouldn't be able to get to keep doing their saviors, which gives them the dopamine hits. So now you're asking, okay, so if that's a game, if the person is constantly lying to themselves for the sake of survival, how are you going to type them? How are you going to consistently type them over time? And then, the joke after that is like, okay, what do you do about that? So yeah. We'll talk about that later. We're just trying to get, how would you actually recognize that? And that's where it became much more fear-based, because anybody can talk very positively about what they want, what they desire, what their brain sees in themselves. There's lots of that. You can hear that and go, none of this could be true, or all of it could be true. What's the difference? How do you actually tell when somebody is reoccurringly doing these patterns? You could spend 10 years with them, so you're actually like, no, you don't do that at all. But again, interestingly enough, a lot of times people can't see even the people in their own lives because they project on them. So that's a problem. It's not necessarily that would be the case. You, your own self as a typist, have to get to the point where you are reoccurringly watching the giant pitfalls, the problems, the things that somebody's stacking. And then fear is a lot of times what you can check, because the human reaction, it's very difficult for the person to hide that. They can lie to you, they can lie to themselves, they can lie to you and say positive this, positive that, positive this. They have a really difficult time not showing animalistically what they fear. And so you're going to hear that in all of their language, that kind of stuff. So yeah, why we track the problems, why we track the fears.
Yeah, what I'm fascinated with is that your system seems like a mix of all kinds of different approaches. That you started with MBTI, like you wanted to fix and actually track MBTI. Then you took other things like Tony Robbins' human needs and kind of overlay those two. And I think Tony actually stole them from somewhere else. I actually found them in an older book at some point.
I think he did. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
But then what seemed unique to me is, first of all, this approach of typing independently, which I haven't seen anywhere else, and people don't even seem to consider that.
Yes.
So because, like, how did you come up with that in the first place? What gave you that idea? Because it seems very unique. And the other part is the savior demons, because I don't think Tony Robbins talks about the human needs in pairs and in showing up as saviors and demons. Yeah.
Right. I think that came from, well, first of all, that was Dave that was puzzling the idea of, how would you prove this? How would you actually come for how would you actually figure out something objective? So it wasn't even, I think when he and I were talking back and forth about that issue back in the day, there was no discussion of, how am I going to do this? How am I going to get involved? And I think that's what stops a lot of people that come to the typing game. It feels like there's a lot of ego involved, and like, I don't want to say tarot cards. What's the palm reading? There's a lot of I get a lot of validation by being like, you know what, empath stuff. I see this in you, and you're probably gonna, have good things in your life. And then the person gives you that emotional response back. And then you get power out of the situation by being like, I slapped you on the forehead and you are healed, that kind of energy. there's a lot of like ego involved in that. Like, I typed you, I get you, I own you, like there's a lot of that going on. And there's zero accountability, whether that was real, whether that was objective, whether that is true, whether that's accurate. There's like zero ST involved in that kind of like slap you on the forehead, you're good to go, right? So Dave became obsessed with, if you were to prove something, so this is outside of himself, he's just looking at this as an observer. If you were to prove something, how does science prove things? You know, before you can go and check to see where the neurological pathways are actually happening, you know, before you have that, how would one prove this? And so that, with that obsession in mind, it just only became about the method itself. How would one prove something in the human? And that's where even the binary coin came from, because you could say somebody has, it's like everybody has thinking, everybody has feeling. So how would you, like everybody has a right and a left hand. How are you going to prove which one is their preferred hand? How would you do that? They have both of them. Oh, I saw them using their left hand. They used it when they picked up the package. Oh, I like, absolutely. You're going to see that happening all the time. So how would you know that at the end of the day, this person is going to have carpal tunnel in this hand and not this one? Why? Because this is the one that gets overworked. How are you going to know that? It's like, I'm like watching off. There you go. Exactly. That's another thing. That's what our videotyping questions are. Here's a ball. Which hand do you catch it with? You know, for sure. Because that's the whole entire game, is if everybody has something and it is in a binary, then what does savior demon look like? Like, what does somebody in a savior state look like? What does somebody in a demon state look like? And then what is the entire like fear based around that function? Because what ends up happening is, if you overwork this one part of your body, there is a fear that if I get thrown something that has to be caught with my left hand, I'm going to get injured. I'm going to cause problems. I'm going to lose something. I'm going to be at a loss. So if I have to catch with my weak side, I'm going to die, you know, like whatever the actual fear is in their brains. I'm going to get ostracized. I'm going to get judged if I'm a decider. I'm going to go down the wrong path if I'm an observer. So it's really looking for that kind of dynamic. How would you do that? You're now looking for a binary coin, because you can't, how would you quantify something where it's like, oh, they're using both of them. Okay, great. Which one actually does this? Now it's a binary. This is above this. So how would you actually track that? So that's what the obsession was about. And from that obsession of objectivity, the game of objectivity alone, because like that's what the scientific method is about, is actually being able to track something recurringly. That's where everything got discovered. That's where everything started. The puzzle pieces started coming about, where it's like, oh, the animals, oh, masculine, feminines, like all of these puzzle pieces started fitting in because of that obsession of, I have to actually figure out which one is above the other. And then you just spend hours playing the game.
Yeah, to me, it sounds like Dave, in a way, turned his saviors inside out. That he started with, okay, what are the reoccurring patterns? So, what am I afraid of? Like, what are the subjective feelings here? Because that I'm afraid to catch something with my left hand comes from me. Right? It doesn't have anything to do with the ball that is thrown. But then turning it inside out to actually do the ST on that and prove to others, oh, these are the actual patterns, while they are subjective. It feels like a joke at the core of the system, that you're tracking subjective states. So when I'm afraid, like, this doesn't mean that what I'm afraid of is actually dangerous, but it's still an objective fact that I'm afraid, which you can track.
Yes, right,
that I'm in
exactly.
the state.
Yeah,
which is
we're just staring at the information. Yeah. Like it just happens to split that way, where what you're afraid of, someone else is not afraid of, and then it switches, and it just our brains happen to work in positive, negative. Fear of this, therefore not fear of that. You know, the yin and yang. Everything's got a proton and electron to it, I guess.
Yeah. But yeah, to me, it seems like a very unique thing that you decide to look at what someone is afraid of, and that you talk about that so much, which I haven't seen in other personality systems that much.
Yeah, well, think about if you go on and do a personality test, there they're gonna ask you, this is why we get kind of annoyed, like, hey, answer our questions for video typing. There's so many ways to ask a dumb and wrong question. I'll use the TI phrasing, a dumb and wrong question. There's so many ways to ask a dumb and wrong question, because if you ask somebody, do you like pizza? Like, how can the person answer that? Like, think it through. How is the person actually going to answer that question? Yes or no? Great. What did you learn about the person? Their personal perspective on pizza in that moment at that time. That's not useful. That means nothing. Someone's singular perspective in that moment with their current level of consciousness about themselves at this time. It literally the person could be like, yep, because they just want to get out of the question. And their family member could be sitting next to them going, no, you don't. You hate pizza. Every time we have pizza, you don't eat pizza. And the person will be like, oh, yeah, right. So like, if you're wanting to deal with only the very tiny percentage of consciousness that the person has, you're going to ask them a stupid, dumb, and wrong question that they could only answer from the 3% perspective according to themselves in this moment at that time that they can see of themselves. You're not going to learn about the person. How would you learn who they are? That's no way to learn about a person. You need to get them unconsciously telling a story. You need to get them unconsciously, stream of conscious state, telling a story from their perspective about events in their life. Tell me positive stories. Tell me negative stories. Tell me how you feel about your family members. Tell me how you feel about your boss. From your perspective, I want to hear how, like if we're looking at somebody looking at a car crash, I want to hear your perspective of how the crash went down. And I want to hear how you tell a story. Because guess what? How you tell a story is so ridiculously repetitive pattern like the other people of your type. And also binary coin, opposite of people who have the opposite functions of your type. And that's the most fascinating thing, is once you start listening to everybody's stories coming in, that's how you as the typer gets better, because you're like, okay, that's one of these, that's one of those, that's one of these. I've heard that story a million times. Okay, I've heard that story a million times. And you just coin sorter people down. You're a quarter, you're a penny. It's like very quickly, the person cannot not tell the story from a fearful state about this exact thing. And therefore, if that's what you're afraid of, that's what you're avoiding. And therefore, those are the reoccurring problems that happen in your life. And now you have the answer to the puzzle. But that's the only way you're going to be able to get the information, is the pressure has to be on you, the typer. But a lot of times, a lot of these personality questions will be much more pressure on the other person. Do you like XYZ? Person answers yes. Cool, done. We're done here. I now have my answer. Because I want this to be fast, fun, and easy. I don't really want to get to know the person. That takes work, and that's super draining. In fact, from what I hear from a lot of people, is that as soon as they start doing the typing process, why they jump out is not because they can't figure it out. It's because they're like, it's really boring listening to people. How do you do it? That's the common thing we have. I'm like, okay, that's where the work comes in, is you genuinely have to get outside of your easy to work programs in your easy savior state and genuinely open up your mind and listen to another person and their fears and their states and their reoccurring patterns for long enough to solve the puzzle. And yes, it's very draining because you don't just get to be in your functions.
Yeah, which is I think true for everybody, right? That like us
Yes,
as savior STs, you have to track the NF of that person, but
Yes.
you also if you're NF, you still need to think about, okay, how do I prove this, and listen to the words and
Yes.
overlay it with the emotional state. So
Right.
I think whatever type you are, you're kind of fucked when you're trying to type in some form, which I'm going through right now in my own way.
Right.
And I also know that you say that people say the same stories again and again and extremely repetitive. And even if you know your type, it doesn't stop, which is just kind of terrifying.
It is
Like just
terrifying.
because I know I'm an ISTP, I can't stop telling the ISTP story ever.
Right. Right. That's the terrifying thing. That's when it gets hard. Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to talk about that? We could go on forever about that topic.
Maybe later. Yeah, another thing that you pointed out was the conscious subconscious thing. And I think a lot
Yeah.
of people know this analogy of the iceberg, that our conscious mind is just the tip of the iceberg and so
Yeah.
much lies underneath. And it feels like most people don't consider the implications of that. It's like, oh yeah,
Right.
okay, so my subconscious is I don't know most of myself. Okay, fine. And then they go about that day. But you
Right.
actually looked into that and saw the patterns of that and how much, like how true that actually is, and how much, yeah, it's also like problems stem from that.
Yes.
Because you don't know your own motivations most of the time. You don't know
Right.
what actually drives your actions most of the time.
Right. Right. Yeah, 100%. Like, I think one of the things that happens is that here's what happened to me, is that when you go along and you're kind of like implanted with these large worldviews that will kind of build the structure of your life, where you believe certain things about existence, you believe certain things about God, yourself, growth mindset, your ability or not ability to achieve or not achieve, where you want to go, on this planet, how fair the world is, how fair the government is, how fair your family members have been to you, male, female problems. There's so many different worldviews that are built up in your mind growing up, right? And the subjective perspective is so intense. It's so all in. And if we didn't have this subjective perspective, we would be spinning. You would be too lost. It would take up too much energy to be in a constant state of, I don't know. So by going all in and believing on these worldviews and just like going about your day, you kind of have enough basically calories to exist. So that's kind of why the human, the animals, that's the way we're designed, so that we can just keep surviving. That's what then gets introduced, the mechanism of unconscious, because you will, just like every other behavior, you'll be doing extremely repetitive behaviors again and again and again and again and again, because that's what's the most efficient for your brain. Your brain needs something that is extremely easy to do repetitively so it can survive better. The less calorie expenditure, the better, right? Therefore, if you keep causing the same problems again and again and again, the only solution would be to just delete that part of your brain, or put it deep down into the more unconscious part of your brain, so you can avoid that. You can just get on with your life because you need to survive, right? And another mechanism is blame. So you have the unconsciousness and you have the blame, and those two things work really well together. When you do a recurring bad habit that causes you and everyone around you stress and pressure, you have to be able to use these mechanisms to then expend less calories, go back to your norm, go back to running in circles, digging a very heavy pit of, in one track, right? You're like creating this circular track where you're just digging at the dirt, scuffing your feet in a circle. That's how we survive. The problem is, if you get enough of these giant worldviews broken, somehow a crack in your matrix pod and some of your goo starts spilling out, or some goo starts spilling in, where your worldview that was built for you to stay in this unconscious state somehow breaks. For me, it was religion breaking down, relationships breaking down, these things that I was like, that is not my reality. That will not happen. And if you had told me 10 years before, I'd be like, there's no way. That is not ever going to happen to me. That's not who I am. And that's exactly what the subjective perspective is supposed to believe, is that you're not like everyone else. You're the exception to the rule. You see this in kids when they're first, oh, I'm going to be different. I'm going to be the one, this is what every TED Talk is about. I'm going to be the one to save the day. Like, that's not me. I'm going to be the one that is different. And instead of asking the other question, like Warren Buffett, how am I the same as everybody? Why don't I just learn from people that have won this lesson? No. We are designed to believe that we are special and different, and therefore we're not going to be the ones to do that. And that's when you get these giant worldviews that'll break, it starts creating a crack in the subjective perspective where you're like, okay, I went all in for so many years. In fact, I went on missions because of this. I built my whole life around this. I got married based on these beliefs and these worldviews and this system that my mind was convinced was correct. So if I can be so wrong, I might want to start playing a more objective game where I start asking about something that is just a little bit outside of my subjective perspective. I need to start asking about what is actual objective reality? Because, as Donald Hoffman will tell you, that freaked the fuck out of everybody, we do not see the truth. That is not, our realities have nothing to do with the truth. And I'm still going to say, is it even possible to see objective reality? I don't think so, because you're still coming through your own filters and attempting to see something still through your own rose-colored glasses. But if you get these breakdowns of some kind of like, whoa, I don't fucking know everything. I'm 5 years old and I don't know everything. I'm going to start playing the game. I'm going to start attempting. Then that becomes the obsession. That's what happened for me, is when I had these large worldviews break down, I had to start asking the question, how many other things am I convinced by and wrong? Then with that little puzzle piece, I now ask the question, how many reoccurring problems do I have in my life? And that question then became my obsession. How many reoccurring problems do I have in my life? And now you're looking at big ones, and then you're going all the way after the tiny ones, because as soon as you start seeing the reoccurring problems that you can see, you're like, oh my gosh, I've been ignoring so much. And once that first worldview breaks and you start asking those questions, you're like, oh God, oh God, oh God, how deep does this cavern go? Because I thought, I was up here with my belief in self and I was good. And once you start seeing how deep it can go, the more you see, 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 the more you see. And then therefore it becomes an obsession of, I want to play a mastery level over any hotspot, any reoccurring issue I'm going to go after. And it might take me a year, it might take me 5 years, but I can't let it go anymore. That I don't want to play the game. I'm obsessed with anti-blame. I'm obsessed with anti-unconsciousness. And my brain will still try and do it. And I watch my brain doing it. And that's now the game. It's like a fun game going the other way. It's still really hard, but once you start seeing the cracks, you can't let go, So.
Yeah, I think it's extremely counterintuitive, right? Because most people all the time just use confirmation bias. They have their beliefs and they're trying to confirm them in some way. And this goes also to the difference between science and pseudoscience, where pseudoscience makes observations, tries to explain them, and essentially asks, okay, how are we right about our explanations for what we're observing? Where science asks, okay, how are we wrong? And how can we set ourselves up in a falsifiable way? So make a statement so we can possibly be proven wrong, but then still be right, like under these more difficult circumstances. Like only if you do that, you have actually some kind of scientific evidence. Like the more you try to disprove yourself and actually prove your stuff still right. Which is what you're doing with typing. But as you said, also how you're attacking life now.
Right. Very much so. Yeah, that's a good connection there. The scientific method feels very NESI to me, where it's like, you gather up the multitude, you gather up the spectrum of possibilities of this particular problem that we're trying to solve, right? And the more possibilities you can gather, the better. And then you take each possibility, you take one at a time, and then you go do the stats and the statistics to test that theory, with the purpose and the hope that it's proved wrong, or you can't prove it wrong. Like it's still in the wrong. You're still like assuming that something can either be proved wrong or that we can't falsify it. Like that is the game. The problem with the other way, like, so that's like all the way from one side, you have science that is playing the scientific method that is not ego based. It's anti-ego based. It's literally against the ego. You have the whole opposite side, which is the guru based. It is the palm reader. I feel something and I push you on your forehead and I push this vibe into your forehead, and the only thing that is happening is good vibes, which is still extremely valuable. That is a very valuable thing. That's why it sticks around. But there isn't any value to the palm reader other than in that moment. There is a momentary positive vibe, which again can be a butterfly effect. It can affect positive things going forward, because if you push positive vibe into someone in that moment, maybe that does unlock something for them in their identity. Maybe that does unlock something for them in their belief system. And then they, their own selves, take that belief and go forward with growth mindset. But that's and so there's a possibility of positive outcome, which is happening and does recurringly happen. And you see this all the time. It's still an extremely valuable method. It's just absolutely not how you will track the observational information that is going on in reality. The value of looking at something scientifically is that I can tell you now why that person was having that struggle and went to that palm reader in the first place. And that person will still have this exact reoccurring problem again and again and again. You can change the sensor, you can change their state, and it will still come back around to, if that person is an observer, they will always fear observational stresses in pathway situations. Always. So even though in that moment they might feel good and they might feel empowered, that doesn't actually give me the missing information of where that person got themselves into that problem in the first place. I want to know the reoccurring patterns. And yes, I think palm reading is a beautiful tool. It just has nothing to do with the outside perspective of why did that happen, you know? So.
Yeah. So speaking of palm readers, I guess one could describe you as a next level or scientific palm reader in a way. So, like after you started wanting to discover or understand this better for the sake of, I guess, doing marketing for RC or to understand what goes on with your clients, when did you think that you had actually a product on your hands, like something that you could build a business on with this discovery? And
That's
why
interesting.
would you think that? What made you think that others might be interested in that?
That's really good. Well, Davey back in the day always knew that he didn't want to continue with RC. So he already knew that he wasn't seeing that RC powers was going to be the end all be all, because there were several writings on the wall. First of all, it wasn't something necessarily life-giving or meaningful. So he didn't want to necessarily be involved in something that wasn't deeper than just I fly a foam plane around a yard, you know? The second part of that is that there were regulations that he started seeing pop up in the RC world and community. And he's like, as well as like, okay, the Chinese are going to get a hold of these plans and build these and sell them on Amazon for half of what I'm even charging the plans for. This entire category is not going to exist for that long. Like the ability for people to be able to copy and paste this is genius. Their level of being able to steal this is genius. There's no way I'm going to be able to compete with that in the future, you know? And I kind of saw the same thing for my own self as a photographer. I'm like, photography is going to be a different thing to sell. I'm not going to be able to charge $5,000 for a wedding in the future. Now they still do. They still charge that these days, but it's like people are going to be having the ability to photograph a wedding on their phones, you know? So it's like, it wasn't going to be something that I could necessarily continuously do year after year. Plus I'm getting old, and 10-hour weddings on your feet with 4 cameras around your neck didn't seem appealing to me, you know? So both of us had writing on the wall with our own current businesses. So that was step one, writing on the wall with your current businesses. The second thing was once Davey had kind of gotten into personality typing in the first place, he saw that that was more where his FI was kind of connected to it. He enjoyed that. He saw that that was something that was very people oriented, you know, as an NF, he's like, this is people oriented. I can, you know, double decider at NF. This is a world that I want to spend my time in. And this is also something that cannot necessarily be taken away from you by regulations, because it is people dominated. People are always interested in people. People will always want to connect with other people. This isn't something that, 10, 20 years down the line is going to get out of popularity. Everybody still wants to know about themselves. People will always want to know about themselves. So that is kind of like the easy business answer for that. Then once we went down the road, I started getting obsessed with, it was like another intern that was working with Davey at the time. She started getting obsessed with Carl Jung, and I started simultaneously getting obsessed with Carl Jung. So both of us were reading the function thing, and it wasn't about Myers-Briggs anymore. It started becoming about the function thing. And as soon as I saw that there was something deeper here, I was like, this is interesting. Like this gets useful. As soon as I can see that something is useful, I'm like, oh, this is a problem solver? You mean there's a puzzle piece that's missing? This is going to answer questions that I have in my own personal life. Okay, now I'm interested. And the second this is like how any business gets started. When you see something that is missing in the market that you wanted to buy, but you couldn't buy, and you have the capability of filling that hole in the market, that's where business gets started. That's how entrepreneurs get started, is I see a hole, I see a void, and I want to be the person to fill that void. That's why businesses get started. And that was something that I very much obsessively saw. This is an area that I think genuinely will help people psychologically wise, because I had been to so many counselors with my ex-husband and everything. And it was just like, nobody knew the answers. No one knew the answers. Everybody was just bullshitting each other. And I was just like, this isn't useful. If you're giving me advice that you would give yourself, but I'm nothing like you, how does that help me? Right? So understanding that that there were very different brain wiring in the person. Now you're like, oh my gosh, I'm now obligated to tell people about this. So sure, this started off as like, oh yeah, let's go down this personality department because that's a useful thing to make out of a business. And then it just became about, why not? Like, I have to be able to share this with other people. We are discovering the code to the human mind that is literally responsible for everything. I now have to. So no matter how hard the business got, because again, let me tell you, I would much rather do something like sell Windex, because that's easy. I would rather deal with the FDA and all that kind of stuff than try and tell somebody their personality type. This has not been the easy road to go. Just don't do it, But the value is, I have to, for me as a number one, like I have to, I've signed my name on this because like I would want to know, like past me would want to know. And because past me would want to know, like it's like an obligation. It's become a mission where you're like, I have to tell people that their life could be easier, that they're not actually stuck, that it's just a game that their brain is playing on them. So that's full circle where this has come from, Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And I know that it has been extremely valuable in my life, like for all the reasons you just told me, because you helped me see more clearly where I was off from reality, where I was leaving voids because I was just simply afraid, and that I could slowly chip away on that and actually in very tangible ways change my life in the last 3 years or so.
Right. It's so good.
You just mentioned Carl Jung and that you read his stuff. So there was a question from Anna. And maybe before I asked this, Anna also had a different question. She really wanted to know about your makeup. And I think that especially the women of the OP community really want to know, how do you do your makeup? They wanted me to ask this question, but I personally don't care. While I think it looks amazing. And because of my IP, I do whatever the fuck I want.
Yeah.
Just as an idea, maybe for a future live show, should we ever do a live show on the SF? Maybe do a makeup demonstration. I think a lot of people, me excluded, would really appreciate it.
That's so funny.
But Anna also
you don't want to know how to do your makeup, Felix? That shocks me. I really thought differently. Hey, don't knock it. There are plenty of men that do really, really good job on makeup. Trixie being my favorite.
I bet. Like I'm not speaking for all men in general. I'm just speaking for myself. Not speaking for the tribe.
Love that. That's fantastic.
Well, we do makeup for our videos, but Holly does my makeup. So
nice. That's so great. great. Yeah, Dave does a little bit. Oh, that's
Yeah,
beautiful. I
but
love that.
Anna also had a bunch of other questions. One was about Carl Jung's project. Where
That was such
where
an
are you kind
extreme.
of off? Now I have to go
From
from
makeup to Carl
SF.
Jung
Yeah,
to NT.
this is also like the spectrum of Anna's interest. Like while SF last being NT consumed double activated.
Thank you, Anna.
So
That's great.
where would you see Carl Jung was off, or what didn't he fully understand back at the time? Because he also didn't have YouTube on his hands to watch as many people
Right.
as you have.
Carl Jung was really good. And the problem with Carl Jung is that he wasn't working with anybody. That was where in my opinion, if I were to put a singular NI conclusion on it, it would be because he was trying to do everything by himself, and him and Freud couldn't get along long enough to sort it out.
Two IPs?
Right? Yeah, exactly. 2 IPs going, you're wrong. No, you're wrong. Done. They didn't agree with me. We're done. So the fact that Carl was able to get as far as he got by one individual is one of those like savant level things where you're just like, well, good thing we had a Carl Jung in our, centuries of existence, enough to record the information. So that was kind of the bigger, more interesting thing, is how the hell did he do this at all? The second part is because he didn't have he wasn't playing a conclusionary game. And the problem with not playing a conclusionary game is that if you don't come up with binary coins, you can't find missing information. And so if you're just looking at things as everything is a separate entity, which is what his NE was doing, everything is a separate entity. So therefore you could have 13 things, you could have 12 things, you could have whatever. Now he did come up with some binary coins. I don't know if he considered them binary. I'd have to kind of look back at that. I don't remember coming so far from that point. That was, I don't know, 12 years ago. So a lot of the information would need to be checked with this versus this, that versus that. And therefore, if there's an odd number, where is the missing information? So that's a lot of how Dave and I were to discover some of these parts. And he even talked about things being in quads, things being in four. So he did see some of these puzzle pieces in quads, but a lot of his understanding, when you start diving into his information, why could he understand TI but not NI?
Right.
Why? And when I read his stuff, I'm like, oh, he's not connecting these. So it was weird to hear SI talked about individually. It was weird to hear FI talked about individually. It's weird to hear all of these things talked about individually. But if you're looking at them as separate connections, you see them as these little pods that are just separately connected. NI is clumping these. So I'm like, oh, all of the introverts are stacking. All of the extroverts are spectruming. So therefore, because I know this one and this one is my function, I then can pull from my understanding of this one to understand that one. And that's how that started. So in my opinion, if he were to have done that a little bit more, he would not have as much missing information as he did on FI, because he didn't understand FI. He was like, I don't know what the hell that is, but something's wrong with that one. Like he didn't understand FI and he didn't understand NI. But like he could have, if he was like, and again, as a single decider, I think that was what was hard for him as well. I think it's very, very, very difficult for the single decider to see the perspective of the tribe. So as an IP, I'm sure you can attest to this, it's very difficult to be like, I am doing this, therefore, how are others doing that as well? That is a huge chasm to leap if you're an IP. If you're a double decider, if you're in EJ, if you're in DE, you're looking at the tribe, there's a little bit more connectivity there where you're like, of course, I am doing something that repetitively somebody else is also doing. So I think that was part of why he would have a problem of wanting to even jump to the perspective of the tribe, because he's not going to necessarily be like, I am the same as them. It's not necessarily, it's a pretty huge jump for an IP to be like, I am the same as them. How am I the same as them? That's like a question that comes naturally to Dave. Like that's a double decider question. So that would be, in my opinion, why there wasn't more puzzle pieces figured out. Again, the fact that he figured out what he did is beyond miraculous. You're pulling, and again, this is what the beauty of NE is, pulling information out of nowhere. like that's very much pulling information out of nowhere. NI works really well when it has the SE that exists to then clump the SE that exists. NE feels like it's genuinely like bing, 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 bing. Like, where the hell did that come from? So the fact that he was able to do it, but also I think what was missing was then the clumping. If he had an NI partner and him and an NI partner worked together really well, then I feel like the both of them could have come up with plenty of stuff, and I don't know. Dave and I just got obsessed with his stuff. So it was both of us competing for the next categorical understanding. And that's where a lot of it kind of, oh yeah, well, I figured out this, Dave figured out the categories of the animals. I figured out that they were connected to the functions, that these two functions combined. Yeah. So it's like, he came out of the bathroom and was like, look what I figured out. I'm like, oh yeah. And I immediately go to the whiteboard and I'm like, oh yeah. And like, that was the game. It just became an obsession to be valuable in the TE, I guess. Like, I figured this out. No, I figured that out, So the back and forth is why eventually we're like, okay, this is where it comes from. That's where that comes from. And then again, part of the game is also, I think your theory is shit. Like, we became our own scientific method because I would try and prove Dave's theories wrong and he would not listen to my theories, and back and forth until one would stick around. It was not because we were like high-fiving each other and good job. It was mostly a battle, a scientific battle to get something that was actually objective. Let's see if this one sticks around, So it worked out well so far.
Yeah, no, that sounds almost TI-like.
Right. I will win. My idea is the best. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So another thing I wanted to go a bit deeper at, you also already alluded to that, like, how have you been using knowledge of your own type since you found it? Because what I find is particularly impressive, knowing your type, that you are a decider, that you're ST, that you're blast last. Very similar to me, just with a big difference of DI, DE at the top, of course.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you are on YouTube, you record on a weekly basis. You not just teach people, or just the blast, you also entertain people with your videos. What were your challenges in that, and how did you tackle it, and how did knowing your type help you do that?
Yeah. In the early days, it was really, really hard. Really, really hard. I had a lot of insecurities. I didn't want to do it, but I knew I would get left behind. So I think that that's part of where my number one ism locked onto it. I knew I would get left behind in this op mission if I didn't do what was necessary for the op mission. So for example, you can, this is very TE, but you can look at any business out there and like, if there's a business that's like thriving or whatever, it has like elements to it that make it what the human needs. Like, it's connected, it's emotionally connective. It gives them a community to talk back and forth. It gives them a community for honesty. It gives, there's a vibe of authenticity. Like, there's all of these other businesses out there. And when I say business, I even mean like Mr. Beast. Like, what is Mr. Beast providing value, to people? Then like why are the masses flocking to something like that? Or even at the time, PewDiePie and Rhett and Link. Like, why is it that these communities that come up have something that is reoccurringly addictive for the tribe members? And I'm like, oh, there's family there. There's family, there's connection, there's vibe, there's love, there's truth, there's a space where I can share what I'm struggling with and not have anybody tell me to be quiet. There's information, there's actual information, if you're scared of like missing information games or how do you run this whole pathway, it has the gamut of what the human needs from the human experience, and one of them is that you have this voice of authenticity. And, if I'm going to get on camera, I'm going to have to share all of the stuff that makes me uncomfortable. And then what would my message even be about? Like, if this was an important message where you're trying to tell people how to do their life, cool. How's your life? I think one of the biggest frustrations with me growing up, this is my my daddy issues, my qualm with my dad was that he had 110 pieces of advice for you that he wasn't following 111 of them. So you're like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be, because it doesn't work. It doesn't actually work. It doesn't work to give somebody advice that you, your own self, have not actually used. Like, that makes absolutely no sense. So if my greatest fear is XYZ and I'm coming to share this information with people saying, by the way, this personality stuff can resolve your issues, and I'm not using it on myself, that's gross. Like, it just feels weird to have something that you're like, oh, and by the way, I use a different company for my, emotional resolving issues. You're like, okay, so why would I use it? Like, if something isn't true and accurate, I'm going to use my saviors. If something isn't true and accurate and real in reality, then it will not last. The people will not actually use it over time. Okay, cool. But nobody wants a bonk product that doesn't also emotionally feel connective to them. Okay, cool. How are you going to do that? You're a freaking blockhead. How are you going to share your feelings about something with the authentic part of yourself if every time you get on camera, you're like, hello, I'm terrified. Okay, cool. So it's still not working for you because your entire vibe is off. Your entire vibe is showing that you're afraid. Why are you afraid? If, again, back to, if this is true, if this is real, if this thing actually works, why are you not using it on your own self? And in the early days, working with Dave, so it was a big part of why I was able to get over any of this, is I would get on and it would be like my turn. We were very much splitting. Like, I would do half the Q&As and I would do half the classes. And for a while I was doing all the classes, and now Dave's doing the class prep. But it was like, okay, this is my time to do a Q&A. And then I would get on there and I'd be like, okay, hello, here is the ST. The thinking function does this. The feeling function does that. And like, in the early days, Dave would hit, like, I would do the whole thing and I'd be like, I did it. And I would be like proud of myself. And like, Dave was like, he'd like hit the off button. He'd be like, so like, recording became the most stressful thing. And I started getting anxiety about it. I started crying about it. I did not want to go sit in that seat. Like, the recording seat became my death zone, where I'm just like, I don't want to sit there because I'm going to come with my saviors. And Dave's going to just be like, okay, that was so bad. And I had no idea what bad was because I'm just using my saviors. And like, again, he's NF, so he's not explaining it. He's not spelling it out or anything. So it took me a really long time to figure out, if I'm not showing up in the correct emotional state, then it doesn't matter the dumb ST words that come out of my mouth. Everybody's only reading your vibe. If I'm uncomfortable, they are uncomfortable, and therefore they can't hear my stupid, amazing ST that I had to give today. I have amazing ST. You don't even know. My ST is so amazing. Okay, great. You're sitting there looking like you're going to throw up. You're so uncomfortable. Okay, great. Everybody can read your NF. You know that, right? Like, no, I did not. They can't read that. I'm not saying I'm upset. It's like, oh my gosh, know the vibe. If you're not feeling that way, they can feel it on you. Everybody has FE, even if they don't have FE. Everyone can feel uncomfortable because they're watching your vibe. Animalistically, we're all like a bunch of dogs that are like sniffing each other, being like, you feel off. And that's what I started recognizing. So what helped me was going after Owen Cook. Owen Cook was my Dumbo feather that I used for a while. And I started using it in my personal life, where I would get really, really nervous going to things like Meet the Teacher Night, where I had to talk one-on-one with a teacher, and it was going to be about my son and, what he's doing or not doing right because he doesn't have SI or whatever the thing was this month, or he doesn't have FE. That was his first teacher. He doesn't have FE or SI. I'm like, yeah, no, he doesn't. So he's bad at details. I'm like, actually, he's really good at details, just not controlled details. So it's like, the amount of fear that I had going into these things was a lot. I'm like, I'm literally going to get judged by an EJ about my EJ son. Oh my gosh, I'm terrified, So therefore, if I could go into that situation in a good NF state, then I could win on these videos as well. That's what became the game. So I'd go and I'd watch these Owen Cook videos, and I'm like, what is he doing? What is he doing? Because he's talking about literally telling people that he's a balding ginger with a tiny penis. And by the end of the night, he's taking him home. Okay. What? That's the weirdest ST I've ever heard. How are you winning with that horrible ST? That's really bad information. How are they winning? And then it's like, duh. He's doing it in the most cool guy, the most calm vibe. I don't give a fuck. You can make fun of me. I don't care. You can't get a rise out of me. So his emotional state was so vibe, so chill. And what he would consistently communicate about is, hey, by the way, when I come to these parties and my vibe is off, I know I have to play this game and go the rounds and talk to girls that I'm not attracted to in order to get my vibe back up to this state to where I know I can have a conversation with people and not fuck it up. And that's his entire show. That was his entire game. And of course it used to be, I don't think he's doing that anymore. It used to be pickup artistry. And that was the thing. But like, I'm a female. I don't give a shit. You're talking about how to talk to people and not mess it up. Okay. I'm not playing that game. I'm only showing up with ST. I'm not showing up with my vibe in check. Therefore, I'm saying stupid stuff because guess what? If I have to show up to recording every week and my failure or winning point is that either Dave hits the off button and goes, okay, and then we spend hours figuring out how to say this right. And like, I don't want to go through that again. So that's my like judgment day of like, did this go well or not? Did I do the right NF or not? Like my brilliant double decider NF partner is going, oh God, that was so awkward. I'm not going to air that. And I'm going, what? Like, okay, that's judgment day. So how many times do I want to do that in a row? And yeah, it took me a couple years to not like play that game anymore. It took me a couple years to figure out, okay, so I legitimately have to feel okay. I have to actually feel good. Well, how are you going to do that if you have mommy issues, if you have issues from the past, if you fear the tribe, and all of that's stuck in there and you've never checked in on it? Oh, okay. Well, you're going to have to play that game for a long ass time. You're going to have to actually go through and sort out your fears, go take action on working through those things. If you're afraid to walk through that door, walk through that damn door, walk through it 50 times so that you're not afraid anymore. And you just do the work that your brain is afraid of. And eventually, I now have it memorized what it looks like for me to be in a calm and positive and zen state. And I also know when I mess it up. There's definitely a couple of times that something will rile me or razz me. And I'll be like, okay, I'm very bothered. Like there's like a moment in the last live show where I'm like, okay, I told myself I was going to talk about this topic for this long and it's gone on for 10 minutes. Inappropriate. My vibe is too far off. I'm taking this too seriously. This is bothering me too much. It's getting to me. And I am now emotionally off. I never would have been able to tell you that before. And now I can just calmly go, I don't want to do that again. 10 minutes is too long to spend in a off state. So, okay, next time, do it better, do it faster, do it even more, give less fucks. But it just takes time. But you're regulating your emotions. You're actually genuinely regulating your emotions because you cannot show up and think somehow people can't see that you're in a good state or a positive, in a bad or in a good state. If you're scared, they know you're scared. So you have to actually get to the point where you are not scared. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I know it makes a lot of sense. To me, it's one of the most valuable skills that I cultivated to some degree, to have at least awareness of my own internal state. That I know, okay, I'm fucked off right now. I should make an important decision right now. I should be careful about what I say, because whatever comes out of my mouth, it will be based on fear because something that happened triggered me.
Yeah.
And I need to find out a way why and resolve that.
Right.
Before I go on.
It's good to make fun of yourself too. Like when I see myself messing up, I try and remember to just calmly, openly make fun of myself because that relieves the pressure from everybody else who's watching you mess up. Because it's like a cringe thing when somebody watches you in a bad state. It's like healthy for them to feel a release when you're like, oh my God, I'm being such an idiot right now. I'm being such an EJ. They're like, Oh, good. You see it. Okay, cool. Okay. So when I see that I'm being an idiot, this type, it's also okay. Like, yep, not perfect, weird, but fine. It's like I
Yeah,
guess
that's
it's a
what.
double decider move, but it's weird for us deciders to do it. Yeah. I
Yeah, I
have to
was about to say
remember to do
exact.
it.
Yeah, I was about to say exactly that. This is like one
Right.
thing that I learned from the double deciders that I need to get way better at. That it's really
Right.
not about did you mess up or did you not mess up? Did you embarrass yourself or did you not embarrass yourself?
Yeah.
But how did you react to the embarrassment? How did you react to the mistake you made? Can you laugh
Right.
about it? Like, can you just do it again and do it better?
Right.
Or will your vibe get fucked off and therefore you fuck off everyone else's vibe
Yes.
and they're
Right.
just annoyed to have you around, which is not because of the mistake but because of how you reacted to it.
Right. Right. 1,000%. That's and like again, playing the game of how do I do that? It's like saying when my computer has a problem, I don't just throw away my computer. Like the computer needed an update. Why would I just throw like, oh, all Macs are bad, so just throw this thing in the trash? I need to now get a PC because it had a problem that bothered me. And to us, we're like, what? And nobody actually feels that way, right? Like, well, Dave
Yeah.
does sometimes, It's like, okay, that sounds crazy. When I mess up, I'm not thrown out by the tribe. Like, yeah, duh. The
Like,
same
I
thing we
messed up,
feel
I need to
about.
leave you forever, we can't
Yeah.
ever talk about we can't ever talk
Yeah.
again.
Perfection. Yeah. Like the need for perfection in your last function. Yeah. Yeah. Totally, dude. Totally, bro.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you for all that. So maybe to move on to the kind of last topic, we also wanted to talk a little bit about social types.
Yay.
Because I mean the community is still talking about that a lot while it's the latest. It still feels like super fresh as
Yeah.
a new addition to your system. And it's still something that people are definitely interested in. That's clear. I mean, you did your first live show on the social types for a good reason. But
Right.
as far as I can tell, the reaction or the acceptance is quite mixed. And it feels like a kind of dicey topic in general. Like it might even introduce a caste system to society. Like it might look like that. So what is it even? But yeah, some people most people are interested. Some people like it. Some people really don't like it. Some people think, it's an interesting addition, but what we're really here for are the OP types. So how, well, I have so many questions, but like, how would you, what's your, in your opinion, what's the importance of the social types in relation to your OP type, or like for someone's life, like to know their social type, but also what made you decide to share that, and what were maybe your thoughts on that and your worries connected to that?
Yeah. So Dave and I are obsessed with anything that is a genetic based. So anything that is something that is born into us that automatically, like I know a lot of people look at like op as like our system. In fact, most people talk about it as our system. Yes, we did label the stuff, but like it's not ours. It's just the human brain. And sure, we're just the idiots that happen to be the filter of watching this and going, it's called an animal. Like we're the ones facing it.
Yeah, which goes back to science, right? Like Newton didn't invent gravity; he just kind of understood and labeled it.
Right. Newton's law. It's like, it's not actually his law. It's not his. It doesn't
It happened
belong to
before
him.
Newton.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's not like when he came to Earth, that's when it started. It just, he happened to be the observer that had the luck to name it, like who gets the luck of naming this thing. Now, again, we can change names later, blah, blah, blah. But like, there is a funny fascination when you see like why and how things got named, animals. Like, the wonderful thing about that is that it gets to be explained in that, oh yeah, by the way, we saw that in watching an animal documentary. that's nice, that's fun. Anyhow, let's see, where was I going with this? Oh yeah, so anything that is genetic, so that's why we clump it into the system, because we are obsessed with figuring out the parts of the brain that are all connected, that all makes it do what it does. So socials just came about as one more thing that happened to be, oh my gosh, that one's also trackable objectively there, because it is genetic. So if something is genetic, it should be trackable, just like you would test somebody's blood, test somebody's DNA. That is something that is trackable. Again, we don't have the DNA yet, but if we're playing this binary coin game and Dave and I are playing our ability to type someone game, and we are tracking the ability to type by getting outside of your own saviors and listening to somebody long enough to figure out the patterns and looking for binary coins, it should be something that you could track. It is this, not this. So that's what was happening with the socials. It was something that could be binary, that could be tracked. And as we separated it apart, we started recognizing the coin of friends versus flex and responsibility versus specialty. And that even more fascinating, and this is what has always fascinated us about these parts, as it should be, it is something that is already happening in the masses. Somebody's already talking about it. That's how it should be. It should be a pattern that somebody else is like, hey guys, something's going on over here. Yes, we should not be the first to see this because, the brain patterns didn't start again with Dave and I showing up on planet Earth. Somebody else should have been talking about this as it was. So feminine sensory, can't remember the guy's name, but there's plenty of guys that have been talking about the social order of stuff, and they're not deciding. This is the joke of like, you can say whatever you want about a caste system being decided and created. No. This is just the humans that were born that way that sift themselves. And that's way more fascinating to me, that the humans themselves are being sifted by their brains. And if we look at the bees, we're like, yeah, duh, the bees. Okay, cool. But what if you weren't the queen? What if you didn't get born the queen? Are you offended that you're a worker bee? They don't care. It's happening in all these other animal species, but because it's not our species, all of a sudden it's fast, fun, and easy, and an interesting part about science. Oh, look at the worker bees. Then you have the bees that are around the worker bees, and then you have the bees that are around and it's fun. It's like, that's really cool. Look that they do that. They have different caste system. Each bee plays a different role. And they were born that way. They were actually legitimately born that way. So yeah, it's a little weird. It's a little weird that something like that is born, because really quickly, and here's the thing that I think makes the biggest difference: fixed versus growth mindset. If you have fixed mindset, every single puzzle piece of new information is seen as a threat. It's scary. It's so scary. That's why I'm not getting ahead. Like, okay, so your bigger problem is not where you're at in this, genetic caste system. Your bigger problem is your mindset about where you are, what you were born with. And that's where you can really start going and watching some TED Talks where this guy had all of his skin burnt off and he is happy, successful, thriving. This person has no arms and no legs and they are happy, successful, and thriving. You are healthy, doing great, have a job, have family that care about you, and your perspective is still that you are scared and afraid and the world is falling, the sky is falling. Has nothing to do with what you were genetically given, what happened to you, So this is not a genetic problem. This is not the socials or the caste system problem. There's nothing to do with that. It has 110%. It's 110% a mindset problem. It has to do with your perspective on your parts, because and that's why I love finding the absolute psycho nut jobs of my type. And then I love finding the ones that are like, haha, I found a way. You're like, okay, so there's my spectrum. Me as lead play, I love finding the spectrum. There's my spectrum of absolute psycho nut job. And there's a lot of them. And then here's one that proved everybody wrong. And I love this game because that's where the movability is. People fear being controlled, especially us OEs. Fear being controlled. So this new information thing, that must mean I'm also controlled. So I hate it. Okay, cool. But it's literally genetic objective reality. What if it is? What if it's true? What if it's objective, actual genetic reality? Well, I don't like it because, again, my brain wiring, I don't like it. Therefore, I can't accept it. Well, fine. Then where are you on the spectrum? Because the only way to get, this is the positive. This is the positive. The only way to get to the positive side, it looks more like that should be the positive. The only way to get to the positive side is growth mindset, where you're like, I see all of these challenges and I went, I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. I can jump over that. I can jump over that. And I can make it. And that has 110% to do with the person's mindset, not where they're at in their socials. So I see it as, I first saw it through the lens of, oh no, I'm the worst, cried for a week. And then, but the problem is I always knew the right answer. Even when I'm crying, I'm like, I'm such an idiot, but let me get out these dumb, ridiculous, inappropriate emotions, because the truth is, who the fuck cares? I was the same person yesterday as I am today. So how am I going to use this information to get to this side of the spectrum and not be over here with my information? How do I find a way to actually be the best version of this type? See this in a positive light. Use this to my benefit. See other people of my same type winning. See other people of my same type losing, and know the difference. It's just a game, you know, and I'm going to start over here because I'm crying and feeling sorry for myself. And then how do I move myself to being like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. The best thing I've ever learned out of the social types was figuring out that as a number one, because I thought I was a 2. So I'm like, okay, so how am I different than Dave? Okay, the number 1 game is I sign my name to this, and that's how I win at this thing. As a blast last, as a DE, my functions have very much been like, I can't do that. That's too hard, or I'm not allowed to do that. And if I know that my superpower as a number 1 is I sign my name to this and it pushes through my stupid blast last and it pushes through my saviors, well, that's a tool I can use. And I've definitely been overworking the hell out of that, now knowing what the number 1 superpower is. Like, oh, that's what I can do. How did I figure that out? I just spent time staring at what myself as a 1 says when I'm winning and what other types that are 1s say when they're winning. And then I just overworked that. It wasn't like somebody handed me this magical information. Well, how did you know that? How did you know that number 1 signed your name to it? I just wanted to know. Hey, so what's good about my type? What do the good ones say? What do they do? What am I doing when I'm winning? And then I just went, that's what it is. It's this. And then I start overworking that. And when you get results, it becomes empowering. And that result empowerment starts pushing you farther and farther and farther towards the positive side. You're getting results in physical reality. Then your brain changes. Your brain changes and you start getting results in physical reality. And then they start building on each other until you're like, this is great. I love being a 1. You know, it's good to see the positive and the negative.
Yeah, that's the way I see it as well. That to me, this was my personal understanding that the social types kind of tell you what kind of life you actually want. Right? That
Yeah.
you, as in a way, you are born with the desire to be a number 1. You didn't choose that. Like I'm
Right.
born with the desire to live the number 2 life. And
Right.
I need to have a growth mindset like within that category, because on some level it is a bit scary that I can never develop the drive that a number 1 has because I'm not born with that. But okay, would I personally really want to live the number 1 life? No.
Right.
I'm good with living my kind of life, and within that, I need to find a growth mindset to build that in a way that works for me.
Plus, you have flex. And if you need to use that tool, you can. You have to reach down and grab it and decide, okay, I am going to use this. Same thing with me. Like, oh, does that mean I can't have friends?
Right.
You know, does that mean I can't goof around? Does that mean I can't connect with people? Same thing like with the functions, like you still have FE. You still have it. So, you know,
technically.
But I know I have FI somewhere, and it's more about that. It's like your saviors will tell you what you actually want and desire. So that's really good what you're saying there. Like I actually want to be a number 2. People that actually are honest with themselves are like, actually, I really do want to be my social type. That's what I actually want, if they're honest with themselves. And it takes time to process that. But once you kind of see that that's all your brain is doing, it is a calming relief. But then you're like, okay, cool. That's what I want. But that doesn't necessarily give you the results that you need in certain areas of your life. You're like, well, shit, what if I do need to reach down and pull up my flex and have flex for something? What if I do need to reach down and actually do specialist for something? And that's the only way to make it through a project. Okay, well, Now you know what it is. And that's the beauty of knowing the binary parts. That's the wonderful part about it, is that you're like, okay, so I didn't even know that existed. My brain doesn't even know that it exists. So had I not known about these parts, I wouldn't have even known that existed. Okay, great. So what is this thing? How do you do it? What? Oh, I now know. When I just am like wanting to die and I hate this thing, that's specializing. Yeah, that's specializing. Where you're like, nope, I'm jumping out. Will not, will not, will not, will not. Now you can hold your hand to the fire long enough to get the project done because you're not just going off of default programming.
Yeah, do I have like my number 2 project that I need to finish? Okay, I need to specialize that. Okay, can I at least do that for half an hour every day? And then I run away after I did a little bit in order to bring the project forward.
Right, that.
But speaking of someone very close to your type, Arnold, who, well, had amazing results in reality. I
Right.
think Riley asked a question about typing. Like, I think many people, me included, wondered about this. Like, how did you not fuck up the OP typing of someone like Arnold, not knowing social types? Because
Yeah.
on the one hand, like, if you know it, he has Demon FI, he uses TE like crazy. Like, who was successful in that? Like, I want to do that. Who did that well? And he also like built a tribe around him to help him
Right.
grow. But at the
Right.
same time, he has this huge ego and just wants to go ahead and wants to be the best.
Right.
Which, if you're not careful, doesn't sound like an EJ. Not really. But yeah, so how did you pick that apart in the old days? How did you not get confused? And how do you feel now knowing the social types?
Arnold's a really good one because he was absolutely somebody over the years that we had quote unquote missing information on, where we kept saying things like, we know he's this type. So I'll get to that in a minute. We know he's TE. We know he's DE. We know he's TE. We know he has Demon FI. So how do we know that? I'll get to that in a minute. The missing information for him was like, how the hell did he fight so much to get out of Austria, to push through so many of those things? Like, and Dave used to be like, I guess he had a really hard upbringing. Like we would put it in the modified category, where we're like, oh, he must have had it so hard, which is why he had that much drive to get out of Austria and come here and do this thing to get out of Austria. He must have had a really, really hard life. Well, what if he didn't? We don't know. There's like missing information there. But we were filling in the gaps thinking that that was his problem at the time, because we're just assuming that that's why somebody would go to those lengths. Same thing with David Goggins. We're like, okay, why does somebody go that crazy? And then they would tell their story and you're like, okay, but lots of people have had that exact same story. So is this just a Darren Brown effect of like, you're sitting on, with David Goggins, it's like at the time he was like a insect, like a roach killer guy, I think, something like that. And he was like sitting on the couch drinking a Slurpee and was like, I don't want to be a loser. And like, that's what got him out of his state. And I'm like, okay. But like, there's so many people that go through that exact same thing that have not even close to that kind of reaction to it, So it was just a big, giant void of missing information. So how do we know that that's their type? If they have these results of, I want to be the best, I want to go to the top, why does that not then influence their saviors? Well, as a DE, you are always going to be framing things in a way that says, I am not allowed, but I'm doing it anyways. But I am not allowed, but I'm doing it anyways. But I am not allowed, but I'm doing it anyways. But I am not allowed. Okay, so do the DIs talk like that? No, they do not. And that's where you get really, really careful about the human need of something and somebody in a savior state versus a demon state. Because, you can do amazing things. Everybody can do amazing things with their saviors, with their demons, or whatever. Like Arnold did amazing things with his particular parts. He will still always frame things in a way of ... They didn't believe in me. And that was the hardest thing for me because I didn't have the support of the tribe. And I actually, oh my God, had to believe in myself. He's looking at things and framing things in a way that he wasn't given permission. And that was the strain. That was the stress, is that his brain wiring said ... And so with all of this stuff of the person's behavior, the things that they're able to accomplish, blah, 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 as a typer, you're still asking the questions, but what is their wiring sparking on and then also not sparking on? What is their wiring going zzz? As a DE, you are not allowed, because you'll have these DIs that'll still be extremely loving and giving to the tribe, give everybody the credit. They're still going to do all of that kind of stuff. And yet they don't need permission. They don't need permission. Their brain does not need permission. In fact, what they want is everybody to align with them. That is still the game of it's either going directionally this way or it's going directionally that way. And if you're looking at a binary coin of like what makes DE savior and what makes DE demon, the DEs, no matter what they've accomplished, no matter what they finally decided for themselves, will still see the tribe like this. Always. They talk about the tribe, they see the tribe like that. That they have to deal with this tribe that is above them, looking up. Always. Even Arnold, who is at the top, I'm at the top, I'm at the top, I'm at the top. Okay, cool. How'd you get there? Well, I wasn't allowed to this, and they wouldn't let me that, and I had to move around them not letting me, and them not letting me, and them not letting me, like judgment here, judgment there. And you're like, you're Arnold. It's like, still from that guy, you're going to hear DE speak versus DI speak. So now you're listening to what the wiring is happening in that guy's brain. And yes, it's contradictory wiring. He has contradictory wiring that demands that he becomes the best version of himself, number one, and is also not allowed.
Yeah,
so it's more interesting. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's amazing that you moved through that. And a few weeks ago, I watched a 3-part Netflix documentary on him. And like, speaking of people with same backgrounds but different results, if I don't mess this up, he had a brother and both suffered from a very, very strict father.
Yeah.
And I think the brother committed suicide at some point.
Did he really? I didn't hear that.
I think so. If I'm not messing this up, so someone do the consume and check the ST on that. But yeah, so
he did have it hard, and again, that could be.
I think it was mixed to some extent. It was hard, yeah.
Right.
That he didn't have a bad childhood, but this very strict father.
Right. And yeah, I think there's plenty of people still that will have really strict fathers, but that doesn't necessarily turn on a number one gene and then tell them they have to go to the top, That's not necessarily pushing them to be the best version of themselves. They're like, oh, my dad was really strict, so I just wanted to go and find a new family. If they're 4, I want to go find a new family and connect with other people to where I feel like I can be on the same level with them. And it's just a different story. Just becomes a different story. Yeah.
And to me, it's just crazy that essentially the story is in your head first, and then you make the facts fit, but also try to align the facts, like act in a way that fits the story in your head that was there from the start before anything ever happened.
Yeah, projecting. Yeah. It is interesting where it's like the Matrix pod has become one of my like masculine NIs that I continuously go back to. And it's so accurate where your story is just so delusional and you'll just tell yourself the story again and again and again. We all do it. I'm this. This is who I am. This is how the world is. And then you just make the facts fit. And how would you ever track objectivity? How would you ever track if you're wrong? Look at your results. Have you ever been wrong? It's back to the game of finding out, what objectivity is and also gaining more consciousness. It's playing the opposite game instead of, I know I'm right. How do I prove myself right? It's the scientific way of, I've been wrong a lot, so I'm going to be cautious from here on out. For sure.
Yeah, so thank you for that. Like, we talked a lot about how we're off from reality, how we're wrong, how difficult it is to actually get through and even acknowledge that and then use it. But I thought I wanted to end the interview on a lighter, funner NF note. So I prepared a round of rapid fire questions that I did not tell you about.
So, all right. Play energy.
So yeah, exactly. So also people in the chat, thank you everybody for watching, by the way, and commenting. Feel free to play along. So I have a bunch of questions, and please just give me your gut feeling, your quick FI answer. Some of these questions have a why at the end, and then just feel free to add 1 or 2 sentences as an explanation if you want to.
Me. Okay, what am I? Okay, I'm adding 1 or 2 answers. Okay, so keep it short.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's gonna be hard.
I know I'm really forcing you to do a demon, so I'm sorry.
Do and I. Okay. Ready to go.
All right.
This is fun.
First question.
You're doing your demons, I'm doing mine.
If you could be one other type for just one day, which one would it be and why?
Oh God. Shit. I don't know if I would want to be another type. I mean, maybe it would probably be Dave, because I would see that it would be very useful in our relationship to live in his skin for a day, just so that I could be like, yeah, you got some crazy shit going on in there. I can understand better. So it would only be for that purpose, because I would definitely see a value in actually being able to see, how he's living. Yeah. So Dave's type, purposely for our relationship. Yeah, that's what it would be.
Yeah, I'd love to live in an IJ set for a day to just see what's going on, because I don't get it.
Right, for sure. Yeah. What the heck is going on in here?
Yeah, but if you could flip, next question, by the way, if you could flip one of your coins, which one would it be?
I'd probably want to do any instead of SE for at least a day. Yeah, I think that would be really interesting. Because I like my TE. Yeah.
So you'd be Holly for a day.
I'd be Holly for a day. Holly, let's do it. Maybe we can swap. It'll be like, what's that one movie? I can't even feminine sensory remember. See?
Oh, I think there are a lot actually.
Yeah, the problem is like 13 going whatever. Freaky Friday. The problem is having feminine savior sensory is completely useless. She says deal. Okay, good. So it's like, if you're gonna have savior sensory, have it as masculine so you can actually use it. You cannot use feminine sensory as a savior. It's like, I need to come up with the information. Crickets. So if I had masculine NE, I'd at least be able to remember what I wanted to remember. So that's what I would want. Yeah.
No, you would not be. Trust me.
Oh, he's like, yes, but you're forgetting that comes with demon feminine SI. I'm like, oh shit, you're right. I forgot about that.
Let me throw Holly under the bus, you would.
True. I forgot. I forgot, Holly. I forgot. I want my shit pile instead of your shit pile. Never mind. I changed my mind.
Yeah, but I know what you mean with the feminine SE. You constantly look at the sensory, but then you forget about it.
Yeah.
Why?
So I can't
never
talk.
Stop looking.
Yeah. I can't talk when it's about something new. If it's about something in my known information, I can blast on it forever. Then I don't shut up because it's in my masculine and I. So yeah, feminine SE. Anyways, what's next?
All right.
What you got?
What was the favorite typing class that you ever did on a celebrity?
Oh, probably Bo Burnham.
Oh,
that was a long time ago.
Yeah,
but that one was very emotional. But it was really interesting at the very end of that class how he perfectly emotionally explained his stress with observational things is all what he'll complain about, but really what his fear was the tribe love. I just want you to love me. That thing at the very end. And it was so like, there it is. That's what I'm trying to show. So that was a really interesting, cool class. I think that was my favorite. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't expect that one. But yeah,
what's your favorite? What's your favorite?
Anthony Bourdain.
Oh, right. That was a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, but with Bo Burnham, I think in the class you really explained the IP struggle well, and also the IP discovery of, oh, everyone suffers just as much as I am, and their inner lives is just as complex as mine. Like, whoa.
Missing information about the tribe. That's really good. Yeah. For sure. That was a good one.
All right, and now I have a bunch of questions that are either or questions between two people that
All
are
right.
very similar types and also play similar roles. And I'd like to know your FI, which person you prefer.
Awesome. That's good.
Okay, let's start with Tony Robbins or Gary Vee.
Oh. Ooh.
Yeah, I made some of these hard.
That's a really hard one. Gosh, because both of them make me cringe. And I also admire both of them. They both make me really cringe. Gosh, this is really hard because I love Tony Robbins' ability to just, go after somebody's bullshit and be like, this is your thing. And they're like, oh my God, you caught me. And Gary makes me cringe too much. I think there's a lot about Gary that I feel uncomfortable by. I'm like, dude, you're not even. I would say Tony. Yeah, I would say Tony. Okay. Yeah, Tony. That was a tough one. That's good.
Yeah, but also like for some of them, there are right and wrong answers, but we'll get to that.
He says your TI. Oh no, your FE would be like, you're wrong. The tribe says. That's good.
David Goggins or Jocko?
Jocko. That one's easy. That one's so easy. God, I love that guy. That guy's a hero of mine. Yeah, for sure. Goggins has a lot of unprocessed emotions. A lot. And it's funny that he writes a book about, can't hurt me. That's back to the like, okay, this is uncomfortable. Like the vibe is off. There's some weird emotions there that aren't resolved. So yeah, just all the way Jocko. Jocko's a hero. He's great.
Yeah, he seems much calmer and much more resolved.
Settled.
Yeah. With David Goggins, he was really, or he can be really inspiring until he gets off-putting.
Yes. Still got some stuff not solved. So you're like, okay, why are you doing the running then? So what should you be doing instead? It's like, maybe you should be crying with some friends and resolving some insecurities, Yeah. Jocko.
I have another easy one. RuPaul or Kanye West?
Oh, that's so easy. RuPaul's, that's one of these. That's one of these to the extreme where you're like, RuPaul is the best. Well, okay, I say that, and RuPaul's also a pretty big asshole in a lot of things, but I still am like, well, she's still the queen. Like he's still the queen. Like RuPaul's the best. And Kanye, yeah, same. Kanye has the same problems as Jocko had, or not Jocko, sorry, Goggins, or just a massive ball of unprocessed masculine FI demon. I see that a lot. Poor masculine demon FIs have a really hard time because it's not moving, and if you're not processing this, gosh, that would be the hardest. Masculine, sleep, NF last. Yeah. So like giant ball of non-movable sleep energy that has never been processed, that hasn't been brought out. Yeah. But see, you have RuPaul. So RuPaul's doing great. So you're like, well, that's what it looks like.
Yeah. And they're also both number ones, right?
Yes. So look at what it looks like. Like, look at what RuPaul is doing with his life. You're like, okay, this is a extreme, flamboyant drag queen that is dominating the planet being a drag queen. How much does Kanye have in there that he's not expressing? That he's not, and I'm not saying he wants to be a drag queen. I'm not saying that he's gay. I'm saying that there's probably a lot of stuff in Kanye that he's absolutely not exploring and not owning, that it has forced him to come up with all kinds of weird bullshit reasons for things. You're spinning around. That was not a 2-line answer. I am messing this game up already.
No. I love it.
I just realized I'm going, get shut up my damn blast.
Yeah, okay, I'm unable to control you.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I'm doing it. I'm being bad. All right, next question. Who's supposed to be doing play?
Possibly a bit harder. Sadhguru or Viktor Frankl?
Oh, shit. Damn it. Okay, that is really hard. So same exact type. One's a 1, one's a 3.
Sadhguru is the number 1, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's what I've thought.
And I just love him, even though he's probably slightly nuts. And I always say, like, if you lived with a guy, you'd be like, dude, that guy's fucking nuts, you know? But I love him because his perspective is so like, hey, stop giving a fuck, you know? That's a really good one because Frankel feels along the same lines. This feels very much like we're playing a decider game. We're like, which one's on this side? Which one's on this side? This is totally a decider game. The same problem with Frankel is like his information is genius. But when you look at the guy, you're like, you're not settled yet, are you? Like you still, I mean, again, like, okay, the guy went through literally hell on earth. So, oh my God, you know, there's no, you cannot blame the guy. I have no idea what he went through. Holy shit. Yeah. But his information was brilliant. But Sad Guru is my FI. Like he's like genuinely my FI, where I'm like, I love this person. I learned from this person. His Zen state is something that I am consistently trying to aspire to. So if I'm looking at my FI, I'm like, it's Sad Guru. It's Sad Guru easy. But the information that Viktor Frankl provided is a giant building block that I'm consistently using to get free. So you're like, which one is more valuable? You're like, I mean, if we're looking at just the guy, it's Sad Guru. Like he's my best friend and he doesn't know it kind of thing. And Viktor Frankl, I still came to that information on my own. It's just after I heard that from Viktor Frankl, it's still like, yeah, that slowing down your trigger to reaction. Like, yeah, that. So I don't know. I just think it's brilliant what he shared. But yeah, okay, Sad Guru, done. That
okay.
was ridiculous. A lot of TE for that little baby FI.
And at the end, pretending you were quick.
I know. No, I was not. That was insane. Too much TE for my FI.
Okay, then you get another hard question. Oprah or Byron Katie?
Byron Katie.
Okay, it was easy for you?
Yeah, because I as much as I admire Oprah, she's the queen of television, all that kind of stuff. Get the two of them in the room. Like go watch the Byron Katie class, and when you watch the clips of her, Oprah and Byron Katie's like, I'm free, here's how I did it, and Oprah's like, so what do you mean by that? Like she doesn't get it because she isn't necessarily living to the level that Byron Katie's living. Byron Katie's probably an absolute nut job in her areas, just like me. I'm an absolute nut job, but it's like she died on a sword to find those TI answers for herself. And the fact that she has puzzled through and figured it out and given herself this reoccurring ST tool that she consistently is using to figure out, it's like, it is actually more like her consume. It is more like TINE, very much like that, where it's like, flip it on its ass to figure out the truth. You know, like she's given that to herself, and she has a lot of work done on her actual consume. And that is brilliant. It is helping so many people. I am way on board with that. Oprah, there's like a clip. I don't remember if Davey did this on a Q&A or something like that. He might have, but it was like her and Clint Eastwood, where they like went out to go golfing together. Maybe he just showed me this clip. I don't know if this is in the class or not. So there's a clip of Oprah golfing with Clint Eastwood, and she was just like panicking and like kind of like freaking out. And you could like actually see her in her demon function state. Again, if you got Byron Katie on the same stage, maybe she would freak out as well. But you could really see like, hey, Oprah, why didn't you do some studying on like how to swing a golf club? If that was going to really freak out your TI, like, why didn't you go do some homework here? But you're usually seeing Oprah in her box, in her safe zone, you know? So it's just kind of like, oh, there might be a lot of work that Oprah hasn't done yet. Oh my God, I'm TE explaining everything. Okay, Byron Katie, done.
But I'm pretty sure it was in the Q&A. Like it did trigger some memory while you explained.
Yeah.
Okay, next one. Tom Bilyeu or Alex Hormozi?
Ah, shit. Okay.
Gotcha.
I know. That's a good one. For me, it's Tom Bilyeu. Yeah.
Okay.
For me, it's Tom. I admire what Alex has done for himself. I think it's great, but I just think with Tom, I've watched Tom over the years go from being an out of control SE, FE, trying to force everybody to number 2, beat the hell out of the tribe, to being a lot more owning of his flex and a lot more owning of his mission and not as much beating on the tribe. And just watching him narrow down and dial in his SE has been really impressive. So, Tom Bellio.
Okay.
That was only a paragraph, not a whole page. Tried.
Imogen Heap or Patrick Stewart?
That's a weird one. I don't have.
Yeah, I love Patrick Stewart. That's why I wanted to ask that question.
I love Imogen's music, but I love Patrick the person. So I'd go with Patrick. Yeah.
Okay.
That was one sentence. Yeah.
A personal one. Mary J. Blige or Pamela Anderson? Although I guess I know the answer.
Pam.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Pam. Mary J's a
Wow.
badass. There's no question about that. Mary J's an absolute badass. But Pam, again, I've been watching her. Well, I've watched both of them. I watched Mary J and Pam since I was a kid. But seeing Pam struggle through her FI consciously is something that's really, really, really impressive. I mean, Mary J is doing the same and stuff, but the conscious level that Pam is having to go through, and as a 3, that would be really hard. What she's doing is really hard, and the experiences she's had in life has been pretty difficult. So yeah, I guess it'd be Pam. That's a hard one too. But Mary's a queen, obvious, but yeah. Okay.
Last one. Keanu Reeves or Carl Newport?
Oh, Keanu.
That's definitely the right answer.
No question. Cal Newport makes me so uncomfortable. And Keanu is the best human on the planet, next to Paul Rudd. I think those two compete for best human on the planet. Yeah. Everybody's favorite FE person on the planet. It's like Paul Rudd and Keanu Reeves are like neck and neck for that position. So yeah. And you'd ask people who's Cal Newport, they'd be like, who?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. To me, Cal Newport is very inspiring in terms of blast and just putting information out there and kind of educating the tribe. But like, if you just ask your heart, then it must be Keanu.
It's Keanu. He's Neo. I mean, and John Wick.
Yeah, and then in real life, he really is the nicest person alive. So
Yes.
While being a weirdo mope who can't talk at all.
I know, right? Yeah, he's the guy that'll give you the shirt off his back. That's for sure. Yeah.
All right. So this
guy.
ends my rapid fire questions. Thank you so much for playing.
That was fun.
So yeah, for the end, is there anything you want to plug from your side? Anything else you want to say?
No, just I love you guys. You can do it. There's my number one message. You can do it. Whatever you're afraid of right now, whatever you're having a hard time with, it's all solvable. It's all possible. Just gotta believe in yourself. I know that sounds really fake and silly and ridiculous, but it's absolutely true. Okay, that's it. That's all I got.
Yeah,
That's my number one message.
It does sound trite, but I think it really does start there.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so then let me plug a little bit for you.
Yay!
So if you want to see more of Shan, just go to the Objective Personality YouTube channel. It's linked in the comments. And if you want to see even more and join their class and learn more about typing, go to objectivepersonality.com. That's the new site now, right? It's also linked in the description. So if you can't get enough of Shan, just go there and you'll find more and more and more.
Great. Thank you so much, Felix. You did such a good job. This is Felix's first interview. Look how good he did. I'm so amazed and impressed.
Thank you so much.
Thanks
and
for having
you,
me.
everybody. Thank you for coming on the show, I guess. We'll do more interviews in the future, but also thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you, everyone, in the comments. In about a month, we don't have a date yet, but next month, Holly will interview Dave. So that's coming up.
Nice.
So feel free to subscribe if you don't want to miss this.
There you go. Subscribe.
Thank you,
subscribe.
everybody. And see you in our next video.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.